Welcome to Monday through Sunday. I'm Logan.
I'm Sanam.
And I'm Lane. We're best friends, the founders of Blossom Brands, and the hosts of this podcast.
We can't wait to take you behind the scenes of running a 7-figure agency with our best friends.
We're sharing our mistakes, our lessons learned, and giving you tactical advice to build the career, the business, and the relationships you dream of, and a life you don't need a weekend to escape from.
So let's get balanced and let's get down to business. Welcome to the show.
Hello, and welcome back to the Monday through Sunday podcast.
Hello.
Today you have myself and Sanam here.
In person.
We are in person. It is my early Christmas present. It's just more time in your presence.
My present would be if you would bring Ruby around every time, but I feel like I have to ask like 4 times for like one occurrence. But it's okay. I'm just going to keep maintaining my persistence.
But look like how much like equipment and shit we have on the floor. Like where would Ruby go?
In my lap.
I set you up for that one.
It's very clear. Like, okay. But yeah, sure.
Honestly, it cracks me up so much to listen back on our episodes that I've recorded at home because every now and again you just hear a tiny Ruby bark. And I told Andrew, I was like, I know if you've been listening to our podcast or not, because I know you would make a comment about the Ruby bark. So
good test.
Because there was one that she was barking like pretty consistently throughout. Like it's not annoying, but it's definitely like, oh, there's a dog.
She barked a few times during egg freezing. That makes me happy.
That's the one that it was.
Yeah. We love her.
We love her. We miss her. She's home in Fort Worth enjoying her house. And we're here in Dallas ready to chat.
Done.
All right, let's do it. So today we are talking about our number one productivity, organization, life hack, like truly the number one thing that we live and die by when it comes to structuring our business and structuring our lives. And that is our Google Calendar.
And might I add, one time I posted a picture of our Google Calendar on Be Real, and I got so many responses of people saying how scary my calendar looks. And I understand that because when you're looking from the outside, it's like so many events, so many different colors. It's like the days are filled, but it's actually not as scary as it seems. And it is the best app and the best tool that has changed the way we do business and life. And I just like can't get enough of it. And I'm very excited. I know we're going to talk through what our 10 top ways to use the app.
Yep. Our tactical tips for maximizing your Google Calendar, which I really feel like helps me squeeze the most juice out of my day.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing more satisfying, which is maybe a little sick, than knowing that like every 15 minutes of my day is accounted for and like I'm doing something productive every single second of every day, which sounds a little psychotic now that I say it out loud. But like I even plan like when I take a lunch break, I plan like what time I'm going to go to bed at night. Like it's all on my calendar.
Yeah.
Not all the time. I will say we'll get into this, but there's definitely, I don't like to have events on my calendar that I don't actually follow through on. So if like I have habits that I'm not really sticking to, I'll delete it from my calendar for a while, re-add it.
Same.
But in general, I try to make my calendar and I adjust it and I use it in real time. So if something is on my calendar, it happened. If it didn't happen, it gets deleted or moved or rearranged. And it just really helps me keep track of what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis to make sure that I'm leveling up, reaching my goals, because we've got big goals to accomplish around here.
This is very true. And before we get into that, Logan, do you have a personal or professional best today?
I sure do. I think we both do, which is that because like we mentioned, we're here in Dallas recording. This is actually our first time recording 2 podcast episodes back to back.
Whoa.
Talk about stamina. We just walked across the street. Our office is in the coolest location. It's in Lakewood which is just east of Dallas. And we have so many things that are walkable to us. We have a Kava, we have a Sweet Green, we have a Starbucks. It's just everything that you could ever want. And so we walked, had a little lunch break, had a little Kava. I got a Starbucks because we accidentally spilled my first one on the floor this morning. So we are caffeinated. We are ready to go. And I'm just like proud that I'm like still breathing and like excited to record a second episode today.
And now we made it a goal for like the next time that I'm in town, we're going to try and record maybe 3 or 4 episodes.
Yeah. I think part of the reason I'm able to do this is I honestly didn't prepare for like the last episode or this one. Like we're really just flying blind. But I feel like there's something
this is the topic that we can fly blind with because we can talk about like our Google calendars endlessly.
Off script, baby.
Endlessly. All right.
Let's do it.
Take us in.
So tip number 1 is the Google Calendar specifically is far superior to any sort of other calendars out there. It beats iCal, it beats Fantastical, whatever other Outlook. Yeah, what other app you're using, Google Calendar is so superior.
Because you can use it on your phone, on your watch, on your computer, on your car. It literally syncs everywhere. And like, I don't know if the iCal does it. I feel like it does
The
too,
iCal is
but
so
it's just
delayed.
not
It
as
syncs across
efficient.
your devices, but when you make a change that it takes so long to sync across your devices. So the reason Google Calendar to me is so superior is because if you change something on your desktop, on your computer, on your browser, it's going to change on your watch right away. If you make your Google Calendar, which I guess that's the first tip, is make your Google Calendar the default on all of your Apple devices. So you can change it so that iCal isn't your default and Google Calendar is. So like when I get in my car and go on CarPlay, if I allocated like, and this is how detailed we get, like I drove here to Dallas this morning. I put an hour on my calendar to drive. So the whole time I'm driving in my car, I see driving from 9:30 to 10:30 a.m. So if it's 10:45 and my butt's still in the car, I know I'm running late and I'm going to have to adjust some things. So Google Calendar so superior, just I feel like because the real-time updates, because we really do use it. Like I will adjust things depending on exactly how long it took me. And if there's any kind of lag, like we can't have it.
Nope, not here for it.
Yeah. So
all right, taking us right into number 2. Sharing calendars across teams. So we share calendars with everyone on our team. We make sure that we all have access to each other's calendars, and for a few reasons. One, it gives visibility into what people are doing. So like a lot of times I'm coordinating sales calls with different clients, and some of the times I need Logan and Lane to join me on these sales calls. And so I don't need to ask them like when you guys are free, for example. I can just schedule it for you because I have access to your calendar. And 2 is giving edit access, specifically all permissions. So the 3 of us do this together. Logan, you can explain it better than I can.
Yeah, basically, when you give access to somebody on your Google Calendar, you have a few different options. You can either show your events as like free or available, or you can show all of the details, or you can show all the details and give that person permission to arrange your calendar themselves, which is what we do. So Sanam can click on a calendar and send an invite as me. So it comes from Logan Lockhart if I update a change. So if I own an invite for like one of our client meetings, but I'm out that day and she just wants to adjust the time, she can do that. It'll adjust on my calendar, hers and everybody else's.
We've had to do that for Lane's mat leave, and it's been so easy and consistent.
Because then you're never like, oh, hey, can you adjust this invite? Like, I need you to do it for me because you're the owner. Like,
and
we never run into that
we can
problem.
be efficient. I can go into your calendar and I can make all the edits on our behalf and done. Move on.
Yeah. I think the more permissions and the more sharing you can do across who you work with. And obviously this is a little bit specific. Yeah. It's a trust thing because we also put like our personal lives on the calendar. So if there's anything that you ever like don't want everybody in the world to see, you can just put like hold or something vague in the title. But I will say it is a lot easier when you use one calendar for your whole life. So whatever that looks like for you, if maybe you have your personal Google Calendar that you sync your work email and sync it to your personal one and make your personal one your primary. We work for ourselves, so we make our work calendars our primary calendars.
You're taking us right into the next one. You just continue on.
Oh, did I? Great. Well, that's exactly like what I would say. You can do this regardless of if you work for a big company or not. Just you can share your calendar externally to a personal calendar that you manage, and then you can run in that level of detail.
Agreed.
Okay, so that brings me straight to the next point, which is no matter which platform houses your calendar, whether it's your work calendar, you're syncing your personal events, or vice versa, I would just recommend that you have everything live in the same place and include the same level of detail from both regards. So whether you have a conference call at 1 p.m. and then a doctor's appointment at 2 p.m., if you need that 15 minutes of drive time, put it on your calendar because it makes it really easy to not, as somebody who is perpetually running late to things, I have a horrible habit of underestimating time, adding things like getting ready time, drive time, in between time.
It is so convenient when I'm planning things like calls and stuff. And like I see that you're at a workout. I'm like, okay, I don't know if she's gonna be back. I don't have to think about it. Like you already have that 30 minutes of driving time scheduled. So I'm like, okay, I know like right after that block, I can't schedule a call with Logan.
So if you know something's free on my calendar, I'm free.
Exactly.
Yeah. So definitely recommend like adding driving time. And also one thing that I like to do is once I got really deep in Google Calendar, like immersed in using that in my life, I stopped using like checklist to-do lists altogether. Like my Google Calendar is my to-do list, and it really helps me be more effective and have more follow through because every time I have a task in my brain, it gets associated to a date and time, and I'm carving out that time in my schedule to accomplish that task. So instead of a never-ending checklist on like a legal pad, which is what I used to do, and you don't know how much time it's going to take you to get through that whole list list or when you're going to do it. Anytime I have something to do, instead of writing it on a to-do list, I put it as an event in my calendar with the estimated time associated. So there's a time and a place and a reminder to get it done. And that just helps me from having to remember it. Again, it frees up. It's like creating a second brain. It clears up that space in my brain. Oh, I need to remember to do this. Like I'll even put like call my mom. Like as simple as that. It's so, so helpful. So you just don't have to remember anything because, oh my gosh, it's such a burden.
I want to mention because I want to be like that. I'm not like that and I can't be like that. So what I use in place of putting all my tasks and to-dos on my calendar is I use Google Tasks. Lane influenced me to get on this app. And ever since I became obsessed with it because you can make different lists for different categories in your life. So I have my Blossom list, my Monday through Sunday list, my personal list, my returns list, my appointments list, my travels list. I have lists for everything. And what I can do is add due dates to any of the tasks that I input. And then those tasks will then show up on my calendar at the top. So they're still tied to my calendar, but there is a bit of separation for those ongoing things that I don't want to put on my calendar.
Got it.
So that is like a devil's advocate approach for anyone that doesn't like to put their to-do list on their calendar, but still wants it connected in some way.
Yeah. And you can still see it digitally and you can see it all in the same place, whether it's on your phone, on your desktop,
correct,
wherever you are. That's a really good tip because I've used the Google Tasks here and there, but I never stick to them as much because they don't like block off the time. Like I want it to block off the time when something's going to take me an hour and a half. It like shows up that big on my calendar.
Totally.
But I do really like that you can have the dates like unassociated and deassociated because the downfall with making them like events on Google Calendar is you either have to delete them and re-add them or move them to somewhere else. And sometimes you like are like, okay, I didn't get to this today. I don't know when I'm going to get to it. So on a task, it's nice to just deassociate the date, but you don't lose that task altogether.
100%.
So I like that tip too.
Perfect. On to the next one. So this is very specific for what we do. So we are a marketing agency. We are dealing with multiple teams and multiple clients, but we create different calendars for different purposes. So obviously we all have our own personal calendars, but you can create new calendars that are not personal calendars that are categorized for a specific reason. So for example, we have a team out of office calendar and we have client specific calendars. Like let's say, I'm just going to throw a random brand out, Target. Let's say we had a calendar for all of Target's promos that they're doing for the rest of the month. So that way, when Target has a specific calendar, I can then enable that calendar to then see it on mine, but I also have the ability to remove it. Previously, I was always adding specific days for marketing promos that we were managing onto my personal calendar. And there are times where I just didn't want to see that in my personal view at night, in the morning, when I'm like trying to schedule a workout. So having things on different calendars that allow you to basically keep it on or keep it off is a great way to separate different categories in your work life, in your business, whatever you're doing. So for us, like I mentioned, it's very client specific, or it's also team out of office. So for example, when I don't have like the coordinator that works on my team, her calendar enabled on mine, but I can see when she's going to be out of office because I have the team out of office calendar enabled. It's just a lot more clean and crisp of a view for me to be able to reference when I'm looking at my calendar. I can't deal with like chaos on my calendar with too many things. Then I just like, it's too much for me to look at.
Yeah, I agree completely. On that note, another thing that I like to use my calendar for is holding me accountable to like regular recurring like admin type of tasks that can easily fall off the radar if you're not allocating the time. Yep. So for example, life admin is a term. I think you came up with it. I don't know where it came from. Okay. Life admin. That's basically like all the adulting stuff that like tends to stack up, like opening your mail, paying the random like blood work bill that you got in the mail from Quest, like doing all those things.
So specific, but so accurate.
Oh, checking my mail is like my number one fatal flaw. Like I do not check my mail and I have to like remind myself. So that's something, for example, I would do in a life admin block. And so what Sanam and I have both tried in the past is like putting a 1 hour block like once a week on your calendar whenever it makes sense. I tried Mondays for a little bit because Mondays I feel like are typically kind of quieter and then you can handle those things like up front in the week. But put that block on there. And what I'll do is have that, it's a recurring event just called like life admin. And then when I think of things that I need to do in that block, I'll go in and edit the single event and add to the description, like certain things like open the mail, order new dog food, stuff like that. So again, that kind of becomes my to-do list. But I think carving out time in your calendar to manage your life is so important because your personal calendar can get so cluttered with things that you're doing for other people or baby showers and all this stuff. And then your work is meetings. Like, when are you taking time to actually like run your life like your life is a business? And I think you have to do that like backlog work to make your life run smoothly. And managing like a household, whether you live by yourself, you live with someone else, is a lot of work. I would argue, especially when you live by yourself and you have no one to help you. Like, there are just so many things I feel like you always have to do, like submit a maintenance request and all this stuff. So I have just found that like having dedicated time that I know when I'm going to do that helps those things not be as overwhelming.
So you would stack these things.
I would stack them. How do you ask?
On to the next one. Stacking meetings back to back. Number 6. So we are obsessed with this. And I feel like we got this from Skinny Confidential after we listened to her podcast like ages ago. But it is so important for us to stack meetings. So every other Wednesday is our client call day. And for these days, we have a client call block. So that means every client call that we have needs to fall within this 2 to 3 hour window. So that way we know Wednesday mornings we're dedicating to being on calls, because that allows us to have bigger windows of time to be able to do more things for ourselves, versus like if I have a call, like we used to do it at like 9 a.m., then 12 p.m., then 4 p.m., you don't have flexibility in your day to whether if you want to invest in a task, if you're like sitting down and focusing your mind or running your errands or working on a strategy, like you need to be able to have those big pockets so you have the flexibility to do whatever that day needs of you. And so stacking meetings allows us to be able to do that. We couldn't recommend it enough.
So I would also add to that, because when we first started trying this, I was a little bit hesitant. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, is 2 hours of back-to-back calls going to be so exhausting? I feel like after a call, like for whatever reason, calls just really drain me. I feel like ever since like the Zoom days started, I just feel like they suck a lot of my energy. So I was always on the camp of, oh, I want to have a 30-minute call and then I want 30 minutes to recover. So I will say I was really hesitant to this at first. So if anybody feels the same, I just want to say this way is superior. Like, for sure, I was completely converted, because you just knock it out. And by the time it's done, you're like, wow, I have my whole day ahead of me. Like Sanat mentioned, to tackle another big project or to do something for my freaking self. Like, that's not work related. So I just want to say that may sound daunting, and I used to think that, but stacking meetings is so superior. And I would also say that your availability, just because your calendar is free, doesn't mean that you're available. You can be not available even if you don't have a meeting on the calendar. And I think that's the biggest shift that we've made. Like, we used to truly, like, when a client asked for our availability, we would tell them truly any minute of the day that we were available. Like, oh, I'm free from 9 to 9:30, and then I'm free from 11 to 2, and then I'm free from 4:30 to 5. Well,
no, ma'am, we are not.
I don't want to take a meeting from 4:30 to 5. So no, I am not available, and it's none of your business why.
Thank you.
The end.
Exactly.
Wow, we're getting a little feisty.
I know.
But yeah, I would say to prioritize, like, your availability is it's not dictated by if you have a meeting or not. It's dictated on, would you like to have a meeting or not? And my answer is I would not like to have a meeting at 4:30 p.m.
Time is money. Time is a luxury. Time is nothing you can buy. Time is nothing you can gain. Time is finite. So what you do with it is so important, and how you manage it allows you to then invest in other areas of your life. So choose wisely.
Yep. And people will always push back on you. Like, people will always push back. Like, my favorite is when I'm like, oh, I'm available at 9 or 10:30. And they're like, what about 2? And I'm like, did I say 2? I'm available at 9 or 10:30.
Thanks so much, Sharon.
Thank you so much. And you'll find that someone will cave eventually, and it's not going to be you if you listen to this episode. Okay, moving on.
Okay, Logan, you can go to the next one.
We're getting a little feisty today.
Living for it.
Okay, so next is theme your days. Tip number 7, which again, I will say this is something I used to be a little bit skeptical of. I used to be like, oh, I want to kind of do a little bit of everything.
Was this
every
a Lane
day.
Catherine idea?
This is definitely a Lane Catherine thing, but it's one of those things which I feel like Lane has a special way of being like, guys, this is the way we need to do things. And we're kind of like, okay, whatever. And then she makes us do it. And we're like, oh no, you're right. This was the way.
Yeah.
Like, she has the vision for being like, this is going to be great if you guys just like listen to me. And it normally is. So theming your days is something that will give her full credit for actually setting up. Because honestly, like we said, she has full permissions on our calendar. So like, Lane tells me when to be, and I just like when to be where, and I love it.
No, it's like a 7 p.m. on a Sunday night, and you'll get like 8 calendar invites for the week as to how she's reorganizing our week.
Yeah. But to be more specific, what we mean by theme your days is essentially, so like, Sanam mentioned that every other Wednesday are our call days. The alternate Wednesday of that are podcast recording days. We also have days that are only internal meetings. So when we catch up with our team, when we have one-on-ones, when we have our monthly development meetings with our direct reports, and then other days where we have like dedicated focused work time or like strategy days. So that's what we mean when we say theme your days. Like look at all the events on your day and do they add up to a higher theme, and so that your brain is kind of working on the same wavelength all day. Because I do think, like personally, I love to have like dedicated uninterrupted work time. Like that's when my brain does the best. You do a little bit better job of like context switching and flipping from a task to another. But I will say, if you're flipping in and out all day, every day on a million different things, it can be challenging.
Yeah.
So I think having set purposes of each day, by the time you get to the end of the week, you're like, wow, I made significant strides, not just tiny strides in a million different directions. I made significant strides in these 5 directions on these 5 business days of the week. And I see this adding up to higher level results for my company.
100%. And sorry, I keep saying it. I feel like I've said it like 4 times in this episode. Whatever. It's
Honestly,
okay.
It's our brand at this point.
It is. For me, specifically, theme days, what I love the most, I've mentioned before how I have like the perfect balance of the bop in LA. And the way I love capitalizing on my bop is like the days where I want to do pure creativity. I feel like for client work, it doesn't tie into me bopping around as much. It's more so when I want to do my creativity work. And so that's when I'm in like a fun new environment that really stimulates my thoughts. So I love working on my industry newsletter in hotel lobbies. It is my favorite thing to do. Like next Wednesday, I have time slated to go work at the Santa Monica proper and work on my industry newsletter.
And not just like any hotel lobby, like the most chic hotel lobby that I've
Kelly
ever been
Wearstler,
in.
like
I love it
literally
there.
can't get better than that. And so that's a way that I theme my day, where like a few prospective clients that we've been talking to have asked me specifically to talk next Wednesday. And I've told them all that I'm unavailable because I'm using that as my creativity day.
I'm so proud.
My calendar may look open, but it's blocked off from my own creativity. And I want to go work in a hotel lobby with the nice iced matcha that's presented so beautifully in a tasteful glass that I'll probably take a picture of, post on our MTS stories, and work on whatever I'm working on, and then go home and feel like I had a productive day without any distractions.
And that's like the kind of work that doesn't feel like work. And I will say
100%.
we're definitely very lucky and blessed to have a job that is flexible, that we can go work in different environments. But honestly, even when I used to work in a corporate job, we would sometimes take like a team lunch across the street to go work. When we would do like RFPs, we'd go and like put our heads down and work at a lunch. So I think even if you have a corporate job, you could try to infiltrate that, like suggest it. What's the worst that can happen? Someone can say no, but I think just even walking across the street to a coffee shop that's right by your office building is totally an option. And I just like love getting in a different environment. I actually find that I'm more focused when I'm like out and about, because what are you going to do? Like sit at Starbucks and just like scroll on Instagram? Like, no, you want to look productive, like all the people around you.
And it feels like you're really contributing to the theme day.
Yeah.
Because you're like, okay, this is a fun thing that I have to look forward to. Like I'm changing up my environment and I'm fully focusing on XYZ that today I themed for myself.
Yeah. And just to continue on, like for people who work in more of a corporate setting, I remember also we used to work in a WeWork, and when I had to do like deep work, they had, remember those like phone booths?
Yes.
Like I would do my really deep work in those phone booths because it was like literally a tiny booth. That,
How
like,
many times did you cry in the phone booth?
Oh my gosh, that was also where I went to cry. It was my deep work and it was my cry session.
Oh my God, I shed so many tears in those phone booths.
Well, normally my tears would start in the big office where someone was yelling at me, and then I would slowly transition to the phone booth to like continue sobbing and then get it together.
The lighting
and come
was
back.
dark. No one would see you. And then you'd come out totally fresh.
Yeah. And everyone would pretend like you didn't look like a puffy mess.
Wow, trauma.
Yeah.
Okay. On to number 8. Presentable days.
This is a huge one.
This is a huge one. And I feel like shout out to Mel, our graphic designer on our team, who manages a lot of our social content. The amount of times I have pushed back creating videos because a date that I planned for the week gets pushed back. And I'm like, sorry, I'm not doing my makeup until the day that I have a date. And that day is when I will film all the content. And if the date gets pushed back, sorry, Mel, your schedule gets pushed back too.
There is nothing I love more than you punning our business around your dating life.
Honestly, you just got a habit stack. Even if it's not back to back, it's the same day. And I'm whatever makeup that the podcast or whatever content is getting that day is whatever makeup that the date is getting that day. And so you have to capitalize on your presentable days. So a lot of times, like, I remember like last week we had a webinar. So I had client calls, a webinar, and then I went out that night and I just made myself presentable in the morning. And as a woman, there's so much that goes into looking and feeling pretty.
Mhm.
So you got to
It's a
capitalize on the
process.
Dyson hair, the winged eyeliner that took forever for you to perfect, and make sure you're really spreading that across as much as you can, because any ounce of effort that you're doing, you are making sure to milk it for anything that it can give you.
Yes.
So that is the presentable day that has really made a difference for me. What about you?
Well, I was just going to say, so if you match with Sanam on Hinge, don't reschedule because you're with our business. So I should have said that.
No, keep that in there. Keep it in because they are. Shout out mom who's watching, who I never tell when I'm going on dates. You're welcome.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, mom.
Sorry, mom. Love you. All right. Limit meetings. This is our second to last one, by the way. We're
flying through this. Talk about time efficiency.
Truly. We want to suggest limiting meetings to 15 minutes or 30 minutes
Okay.
if time permits.
Can I talk about this? I feel so passionate about this. So I don't know what kind of crack people are on that they are just so insistent that all business meetings should be an hour. Like, I don't know why that's the norm.
Or take it a step further. They put the hour on your calendar without
asking. Oh,
that's when like that lights a fuse in you.
That's when my claws come out. Pretty much, if you put a 60-minute meeting on my calendar anytime, I'm pissed. Like, absolutely. That's just not necessary. Because the thing is, if you put 60 minutes on your calendar, you're going to talk for the whole 60 minutes because you know you have the time. Everybody has it reserved. I'm telling you, there's no conversation that needs to take a full hour over the phone. It just doesn't. Maybe a networking business lunch, sure, because you're in person. There's food, there's drinks. Wow, that sounds a lot more fun than a 60-minute Zoom. Mm-hmm. But I would say any 60-minute can be 45. Any 30-minute meeting can be 15. Like, period, full stop. If you use your time efficiently and you push yourself, yes, you're going to have to like hustle through it, but it's possible. But if you give yourself 30 minutes or you give yourself 60, you're going to use the full time. And I think in the purpose of maximizing your days, maximizing your time, and also respecting other people's time, like we don't need to send an email, call agenda, and then have a 30-minute call to just go through the agenda. No, let's all read that agenda in advance. So we come to the meeting and just talk about things that we have questions about and need clarification. We skip over everything that's a mutual understanding. So I feel so strongly that 15-minute meetings are key. 30-minute meetings are max. Like, don't talk to me about 60.
15 for internal a lot now, which you were the one that pushed that. And now that we've done that, I feel like it makes our Monday morning meetings, instead of like 3 hours, takes it down to 2 hours. Mm-hmm. And it's so efficient. Our entire team of 11 people gets on a call Monday morning where everyone shares their updates from the weekend, their personal, professional best, and we're going through the status of each and every client all in 30 minutes for that many people. Mm-hmm. Like, that is efficient and that is possible. So I just want to like add an additional example from like a larger perspective of how as a whole team we can do our Monday morning check-ins for the entire week in that 30-minute block, despite the volume of people that we have. Mm-hmm. All right, Logan, you take us home with the last one because I feel like that's what you're best at.
Okay. So last one, and this is one that I feel so passionately about. I think it's something that I've heard mentioned as advice a lot, but it took me a while to actually implement it. Is that a word?
It took a while. It took you a while to
implement it.
Yeah.
And once I did, I was like, where has this been all my life? And that is doing your most important task of the day first, which I know this isn't groundbreaking, but as a lifelong, hardcore, perpetual procrastinator, it's something I've never done in my life.
When you do it, it is groundbreaking.
It is huge. And like, I have always been that person that I saved my homework until the night before it was due. I pulled an all-nighter to get it done. I saved the big project until 3:00 in the afternoon, which granted that was because I had thyroid problems and my brain wasn't even awake until noon, but that's a whole other episode. Get your blood work done. But I will say, doing your first or your most important task of the day first thing in the morning, not only gets that done, checks it off your list, it gives purpose to your day so early and gives you a win. You get to check it off the list and go, I did that. I have nothing left to stress over for the day. Anything I get done on top of this is gravy. And I want to emphasize that your first task of the day, the most important task of the day, can be anything. Like, for a while when I was really working on building up like a fitness routine, my first task of the day was always my workout because that was the most important thing to me personally at that time. And then what I do is once I master a habit, like that workout, for example, then I can move that to a different time slot in my day, like an 8 or a 10 a.m., because I know I'm going to follow through. And then instead I can insert maybe a big work project in that task or anything else. So I think any new habit that you're trying to form or any big project you have at work, like I used to think people were psycho, but I started doing this and like I would wake up at like 5 o'clock in the morning and have my morning routine from like 5 to 6. And then like at like by like 6:30 a.m., sometimes I would start big work projects, which I used to think people that like worked on real work, like doing math and Excel spreadsheets and shit were like psychotic. But the peace and the quiet at that time of day, there's no one texting you, there's no one slacking you, there's nothing new, nothing can go wrong because everyone's still asleep. It is just beautiful. And that kind of deep work for me only happens at the crack of dawn, which I wish wasn't the case because I'm not naturally an early riser. But I just want to encourage to get your most important task done first at whatever time that looks like for you. Maybe it's 6 a.m. Maybe it's when you get to the office at 9 a.m. and put it on your calendar so that you actually do it.
And I think that can segue us into our action item, which I would suggest as the 5 a.m. Club by Robin Sharma, the book that you and I both read that I feel like really made us early risers. I also mentioned it slightly in my obsession episode of Things That Changed My Life, which I believe was episode 6, but how that made me get into the Hatch alarm clock to become that morning person. But the 5 a.m. Club, go ahead.
Speaking of, I just tried a new sunrise and alarm combo on my Hatch.
Ooh, please do share.
It wasn't the Tweety Birds.
Tweety Birds.
Do you know which one I'm talking about?
Bird.
Yeah, I really like those, but Andrew doesn't. I have been doing the like the doo-doo-doo. You know that one?
Is that a rooster sound?
No, it's like I don't know. Well, anyway, I'm getting us off track. The point is the book, The 5 a.m. Club, incredible.
Excellent. And I feel like it really motivated us. And I think you and I read it around the same time, which was around the turn of the new year, which is always a good timing to like read a motivational self-help book like that.
And I will add, I listened to it on audiobook and they do a really good job narrating it like with the little voices.
Yeah.
I honestly need to read it again because I've really fallen off the wagon with my morning routine. And I was just telling Sanam when we were having lunch before we recorded that I'm like ready to go back on it full force because I feel like you get so much more out of your day. And when we're talking about planning your day to this degree with your calendar, having those extra few hours in the morning really helps.
Might I suggest you re-listen to our habits episode?
I could also do that. You're so right.
I feel like re-listening to that episode really helped me kind of get back into my weightlifting routine.
That's good.
All right. Well, I feel like this was a really productive episode. And thank you guys for listening, tuning in. We know your time is very valuable if that wasn't demonstrated enough in this episode. But we hope you got some great takeaways. If you had a favorite takeaway or one that you feel like you're going to implement that you're excited about implementing, let us know. Don't be shy. Leave us a comment, send us a DM, and email at Monday Through Sunday Pod on Instagram and TikTok, and hello@mondaythroughsundaypod.com for email. But thank you again for tuning in, and we will talk to you next Monday. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of Monday Through Sunday. If you're building a career, a business, or any relationships, we know your time is valuable, so thank you for spending it with us.
With that in mind, we would be so grateful if you can spare 2 minutes to rate and review this podcast. Your reviews help spread the message to more people that work doesn't have to suck.
By the way, if you're looking for your community, join us on Instagram and TikTok at Monday Through Sunday Pod. We're all about connecting our like-minded listeners together. Let us know if there's anything you want us to talk about by sending us a DM. We'd love to hear from you.
Thank you again, and we'll talk to you on the next episode.